Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world and for those who have passed away in our community. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Smurl?
Here.
Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Dr. Rothchild?
Here.
Mr. McAndrew? Mr. King?
Here. There'll be a motion this evening to move item 6G to 7th order for final vote. This ordinance amends and updates the city's fireworks code to align with Pennsylvania's amended fireworks law of 2022 to further restrict the use of fireworks. Anyone who would like to speak on this piece of legislation may do so in 4th order during citizens' participation. Please dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, Public Health Coordinator Work Summary received June 16, 2023. 3B, minutes of the Scranton Firefighters Pension Commission meeting held May 17, 2023. 3C, minutes of the Non-Uniform Municipal Pension Board meeting held May 17, 2023. 3D, agenda for the Non-Uniform Municipal Pension Board meeting held June 21, 2023. 3E, minutes of the Scranton Police Pension Commission meeting held May 17, 2023. 3F, minutes of the Composite Pension Board meeting held May 17, 2023. 3G, correspondence received June 21, 2023 from OECD regarding code enforcement report.
Are there any comments on the third order items? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time?
Yes, I have one. Well, a couple actually. So happy 4th of July to everyone. I hope they enjoy the holiday safely and responsibly. And also this weekend, there will be the Jewish Food Festival taking place. It's our annual festival, and that's going to be Sunday the 2nd through Wednesday the 5th, and from 12 p.m. until 7 p.m. And they'll have a lot of different things there, but a whole lot of food, and it's great every year. So if you're able to make it out on one of those days, I definitely encourage you to do so. And you can order ahead online as well. I think if you just look up Scranton Jewish Food Festival, you'll be able to find the information further on there. And I think there's more information on our city website too. And this past Saturday was the World Refugee Day that took place at Naog Park as well. And I had the opportunity to go, and it was a really great event, very well attended. And I'm just really proud of all the different communities that we have here in Scranton, the diversity of cultures and our refugee groups that live here in the city. And it was a really great celebration of them and a nice opportunity to experience those different cultures and learn about them. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rothchild. Anyone else? I need to announce that our meeting next week will be Wednesday, July 5th at 6:30 with the caucus at 5:45 in these chambers. I'd probably be remiss if I didn't wish my wife happy 26th anniversary today. Thank you for tolerating me for 26 years. And that's it.
Fourth order, citizen participation.
Joan Hodowanitz.
Joan Hodowanitz, Scranton. What I gave you is from a city council meeting on April 11th, 2022, from a third order document where you had all your action items on a log. because I've been asking about where is the property tax database that should be put back on the city's website. And you can see it's been in works since March 4th, 2022. And something needs to be done to get that up and running. Now, the good news is that the refuse fee database has been updated as of May 31st. Apparently, they're doing it quarterly. The bad news is principal plus interest plus lawyer fees plus court costs, looks like we're in the hole for $11.7 million. I'm not quite sure how accurate this database is, because when you scroll through it, you'll see entries for the Scranton Housing Authority, the Jewish Home for 3 years, and one church. So it may or may not be accurate. But something very interesting popped up, and that was, let's see, 5D. This is appointing Selena Andiapan to OECD. And the backup includes a memo from Brittany Hammer, confidential secretary to Andrew Cotillo, referenced this lady. And it refers, she's checked her taxes and refuse fee status and code enforcement violations and her address. And she says the appointee is not listed as the owner of that address. But Tom Coyne did some further checking and found out that this memo is dated May 16th, 2022. And apparently this lady eventually married the owner of that address. And then below it says, apparently Brittany researched the appointee's name on the city's real estate and refuse fee database. Well, if Brittany had access to this database as of last year, why can't I? Why isn't it on the city's website? Tell them get a move on. I want my money's worth out of this city. Okay, let's see. And then another person, 5 Echo, this Robert Shoemaker that is being appointed to the Environmental Advisory Council. I didn't see any vetting on him. I saw his resume, but who vetted him? He's a council appointee.
Mr. King,
I'm not sure who vetted him. I know that Mr. Smurl has known him for years.
Well,
he's been vetted.
you have to check his taxes and refuse fees and everything else and his residency. With regard to 7F, the non-taxable debt issuance of up to $5 million, I never got my answer last week about what is this all about and what's going to cost the city, because the paperwork said there was no financial impact. You need to answer that. And the walkability study, I went to Lackawanna College, was it last Wednesday when they presented this study? There were all of 40 people there in the audience. Many of them were city workers or associated with the city. And I didn't think it was very well advertised. None of you mentioned it last week. I just happened to run across it on the city's website accidentally. And I was not, I understand why you want to do it, reduce accidents, but I wasn't impressed. I asked the man, well, if you're going to get rid of the traffic lights and replace them with 4 stop signs, how am I, as a little old lady who lives downtown, going to know when it's safe for me to cross the street? This is what he answered me. The cars will automatically stop for you. Can you believe that? If you believe that, I got a bridge I'm going to sell you all. So anyway, I await your comments and your answers in 5th order, especially on 7F.
Thank you, Ms. Hodawan. It's Les Spindler.
Meeting Council, Les Spindler, city resident homeowner. The fireworks, that ordinance should be voted down tonight. First of all, I saw in the paper last week where patrols are going to be, there's going to be more patrols, and it's going to be enforced more. I'll believe that when I see it, that it's good that the rules are going to be enforced. And having it illegal till 1 in the morning, that's ridiculous. Who has to shoot off fireworks at 1 in the morning? Well, people are trying to sleep, kids are trying to sleep, people have to get up for work the next morning. You should table that, rewrite it, make it 10 o'clock at night, not 1 in the morning. Okay, Joan already spoke on this, that walkability study. It's the most asinine thing I've ever heard in my life. Replacing traffic lights with all-way stop signs. As she said, how are people going to know when to cross the street? It's unbelievable. Who was on this committee? 10-year-olds? Oh, I'm sorry. That's an insult to 10-year-olds. They probably could have done a better job. I come to four-way stop signs, and cars don't even know who's supposed to go first. So how are the pedestrians supposed to know when to cross? And we have disabled people in wheelchairs and those jazzies. What if they're crossing the street and somebody decides to go? Blind people, they go by that beeping sound that traffic lights make. Stop signs don't beep. How are blind people going to cross the streets? As I said, this is the most asinine thing I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen a downtown anywhere with stop signs. Stop signs are for neighborhoods, not a busy downtown. If this comes before council, I hope it's voted down. Because anybody in their right mind cannot vote for this thing. It's just unbelievable. It blows my mind. It's the most asinine thing I've ever heard of. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spindler. Lenny Cerebro.
Good evening, Council. You have to bear with me. My memory isn't as good as it used to be, and I have to jot down notes as they come to me. I'm 70 years old. I live right at the end of the north-south road, right near there. It's actually the corner of Lafayette and Dewey Avenue. And that whole area for a number of blocks is a flood zone that I've been coming to council meetings and taking it up to try to get something done about the flooding in that area for about 10 years now. I was actually coming here constantly for about 5 years. All you people are different than when I used to come here. Right before, when COVID started and the council meetings were over, you know, then I stopped coming about the flooding problem. But right at the corner of my property is a drainage pond and a 36-inch drainage pipe that over the years I suggested cleaning out that pipe, cleaning out the pond, because it's like rivers coming down Lafayette Street, Price Street, you know, the numerous blocks there. Anyway, you know, some years ago, they came in and they tried flushing that drainage pipe, but they only had the equipment to go halfway down, and they were supposed to get more equipment to open it up because that runs into Kaiser Creek. But they never came back, so that was totally useless. I gave up trying to come here. All the council people would tell you what you want to hear, and then nothing would ever be done. Until about 2 years ago, I believe you got a new supervisor on DPW, and his name, I believe, is Steve Tiemann, or something like that, you know. But he started coming up, and there's a drainage ditch that goes to the pond. You know, he listened to, because I lived there 10 years, he listened to the story of how it goes. I want to give some recognition to him because he truly was the first guy to listen and discuss the flooding problem there, and his crew. So they came, they opened that ditch up, they cleaned it out, they opened up the pond. They did flush the pipe out all the way to Kaiser Creek about 2 years ago. And, I did my own flood protection, but it certainly didn't solve the problem, but it made it a lot better up there. But I'm here tonight because the recent rains we had, now the water is coming from a different place. Right into that pond, into the drainage pipe, right at the corner of Lafayette and Dewey. There's a downgrade there, right there above that drainage pipe. And now the water comes from the property up top of that and runs down. It's running all its water runoff, the debris, the dirt, the sticks, the wood, and now it's going into that pond, down the drainage pipe. That's going to be blocked again. Here we go. So I'm hoping that somebody could do something about the property owner above that drainage pipe before it really plugs up the pond and the pipe. I've been living there long enough to know the process of all the flooding that we've been through. Other neighbors have left, sold their houses because nothing ever gets done about that, the flooding there. But, at least if we could keep that pond and that 36-inch drainage pipe open that goes to Kaiser Creek, it's somewhat livable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shrebro. Frank, can you contact DPW and, in fact, maybe directly Steve Tiemann and see if he can get back out there and take a look at that situation for Mr. Shrebro?
I will. I'm sure he'll take care of it tomorrow. He'll get out there.
Can I
Thank you.
add to that, Mr. King? Last week I asked about maintenance of the drainage basins, things like that in the Kaiser Valley. I know that DPW hasn't got a chance to get out there yet because the drains are clogged if we can get out with the vac truck. So if we can make another request also to maybe get out with the vac truck and to take the gentleman, to agree with the gentleman. Last night while I was out, when the rain was coming down, the water does seem to be coming in some different directions now. So I had some different problems last year, and the problems I had last year that I took care of seem to be different problems this year because the water's coming from some different directions. Could we also get the information on I know there were studies on the Kaiser Creek and the Lindy Creek and robotic studies that occurred, I'd say probably about a year and a half ago. If we can get the results of those studies and what the timeline is going to be for the Kaiser Valley, that would be great.
I'll do that, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Ellman?
Hello, Council. Last week in the paper was what I consider an absolute waste of our rescue funds, $240,000 to teach allegedly the hordes of people downtown how to walk. Make some bicycle paths, plant some trees. This is such an absolute waste of funds. It's directly for the developers downtown that our mayor just can't seem to overcome her obsession with downtown developers. You know, you almost have to take them to court to get them to pay taxes. I don't know why they didn't buy Mr. Speck's book instead of giving him $240,000. In my whole life, I've never met somebody that didn't know how to walk from A to B. That's what he seems to want to accomplish. And bicycles don't pay for the road taxes, vehicles do. This is just an absolute, it's a disgrace to the taxpayers. Here, the library on Greenridge Street, they're trying to raise $50,000, and it's blowing part of it, just absolutely thrown away on Mr. Speck's ideas for downtown. Downtown's a dinosaur. It's residential now. It's not commercial anymore. And I see nothing wrong in that personally, but it's not like we're full of bicycles and people walking like in Sweden and pictures you see of overseas. These people are working. They're not riding bicycles and walking around. And I'm sure intelligent people that living downtown can find their way. The only time they seem to walk is to walk a dog at night to mess up on the sidewalk someplace. I don't know how many of you read Mr. Volp's little article in the paper. Last week he said that if Shapiro's tax plan goes through, utilities could go up fourfold. You know, there's people that I've told you I talked to, they're just on the brink of not making it last year. And here the school board, they're talking about preschool is more important than families living in homes. There just comes a point where you just can't keep this up. There's nowhere to go for a lot of people. And I certainly advise everybody to look at their next insurance rate on their houses, because there must be something wrong, some information getting out about the reassessment. My insurance has gone up twice last year. Today I opened it up from Liberty Mutual. They said my house was worth $193,000, and with this outrageous insurance rate next to it. They said my garage was worth $16,000. None of this has happened till this reassessment nonsense comes up. I phoned them, and I insured it for $100,000. If it burns down, let them sue me or something, I don't know. But the man told me on the phone, they're getting information on the values has increased, and I told them, my one block, I got 2 condemned houses and a vacant lot where they tore down one. How could my house be going up in value? My neighborhood looks like a bomb went off in it. Just a couple houses cut the grass and shovel snow. Fortunately, I don't have nothing to do, and I go from corner to corner with my little snowblower. Last time, I think I only went one time. But
Thank you, Mr. Roman.
I'm going to say people are in for a shock when they get their insurance rates. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyler Day.
Good evening, Council. I want to talk briefly about the RFP that was released earlier this week that's looking for a qualified consultant or a team of consultants to develop a climate action plan. This plan, the consultant is expected to review Scranton's greenhouse gas inventory and project greenhouse gas emissions in the year 2050. Looking at what's in the RFP, the key objective of this plan is to be visionary, inclusive, and integrate measures that improve quality of life, build prosperity, enhance community resilience, and climate justice. I don't know what that means. And looking at what the consultant is expected to do, I think it's interesting. There was some, I think, confusion, or at least some curiosity about why we are having the Environmental Advisory Council, but this kind of looks like it goes hand in hand because this consultant is expected to meet with stakeholders, including the Environmental Advisory Council, which I think one of the selling points on that was it was not going to use city funds. It was going to be no cost, but now it looks like there's going to be a cost associated with it in terms of another consultant. And looking at what the long-term, what I guess the long-term plan is that this consultant is supposed to develop a toolkit for ongoing monitoring, measuring, and evaluation of greenhouse gas. And someone is going to be periodically updating and reviewing greenhouse gas inventories. So that to me sounds like probably one of the recommendations of this consultant is going to be continue to pay me to do this or hire somebody on staff to do this. I don't think that this is a good use of taxpayer dollars or ARPA funds or wherever this money for this consultant is coming from, especially for a city that recently exited distress status, that has the highest tax burden by far in the county. I think probably the priority should be looking to mitigate the tax burden on working Scranton families and not worrying about greenhouse gas emissions in the year 2050. So that's just my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Laurie O'Hara.
Hi. How are you? Laurie O'Hara, Southside. First, I'd like to say hello to everybody and enjoy your holiday that's upcoming. And I'd like to acknowledge all the work that everybody does, and I'll not stand here and pretend I know anything that you do. I leave that up to the people that are elected because it's an issue of trust, and we trust you. I do admit I probably could have paid more attention in civics class, and I think you all do a really, really great job. And so my main question, I have some concerns, and I have one question. Is Scranton a sanctuary city? I'm just curious, you know, is that an official thing? Are we pending? Are we looking? Is it not there? It's just a question.
I'm not aware that we're listed as a sanctuary city.
Okay, that's all. All right, now I have the walkability tour. Sounds like a nice idea, but you have to be able to walk safely in the city to begin with. And safety is something that's really not really there anymore. Growing up in this area, I'm watching, and the reason I'm coming around again is because just sitting home, being out in the environment, in the neighborhood community, and observing that there's a lot going wrong, and it's very unsafe. I politely ask the drug dealers now across the street when they do their deals if they would take that to a different corner, because I don't need it in front of my house where there's children and playgrounds. That's where we're at. We have be on the lookout for the SUV for the abduction. And, you know, I see backpacks walking down over the hill, going down near the school. And what was on the scanner channel last night? Looking for two guys with backpacks. Oh, wasn't that shocking? So my concern now, moving on from that, is the Sheraton Hotel on Meadow Avenue. A little while ago, I looked into it, and it's closed to the public except for the private owner's personal use. What could that be? Well, there's things coming out of New York concerning private hotels, private owners. And what they're doing in New York is they're renting them. And they're getting funds from New York City to house migrants. In one such place in Orange County, they took it to the Supreme Court, and they ruled that they cannot use a hotel for anything other than a hotel as long as it's zoned as a hotel. Just what can a private owner do? See, the city got a hold of this, where they're trying to take them from New York City and put them up into Orange County at Crossroads Hotel. And this was on Channel 12 News out of New York, facebook.com if you want to look it up. And how this goes is they have a master lease, and the landlord would be the hotel, and then the master tenants would be the migrants from New York through .go, which is, the CEO is Anthony Capone, and then he funds everything. So they enter into private contracts. And getting the information that he's close to the public and using this facility for his personal use is very concerning. With the crime that I just stated, which was just within the last day, on the scanner channels, because that's where you actually find out what's going on so that you can actually plan how to be safe to navigate through the city. We can't afford more. Where we're at, we can't go any further. We can't go further with bringing more people in. I mean, can he actually do this? Like, what if somebody came to him? We're only 2.5 hours from New York. Mayor Adams is desperate. And he's trying to go out and around and do all this stuff in 2 different counties already. And what they did in Rockland County was the Board of Health went in and shut down the hotel because they still have the right to do that. The Supreme Court only ruled in New York, only ruled in Orange County, and it says that they have the right to inspect, and in 5 days they have to give up all the information of the people who are there. And with the zoning laws, the hotels can be used as shelters. They can only be used as hotels. So what I have observed up at the Meadow Avenue, which is 4 blocks from my house, and I already have enough backpacks going down over the hill, I don't need more, nor do the children. And considering today's news, we need to take the children seriously in every decision we make in the city. Cleaning it, number one. Walkability, are you kidding me? You can't walk where it's not safe.
Thank you, Ms. O'Hara. Mr. Voldenberg, I think that we had an inquiry about that. And did the code inspectors go over and check on that recently?
We did, Mr. King. We were advised last Thursday by the code enforcement manager that they're up to date on their permits and they're operating as a regular hotel.
They are. Okay.
However, with the information provided by Ms. O'Hara, we might,
If you could pass that
we'll take a second
information
look.
on, and please have them look into it further.
We'll dig deeper.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Voldenberg, I remember sending an email back on, so it looks like May 18th or so. Me and you had some correspondence about the property. Did it take till last Thursday to get answers, or did we get some kind of answer in between then? Just to refresh my memory.
We did get an answer, but then we received more information, so we reached out again for further confirmation.
Okay, and that was the
That's when I
answer we got?
received the word from the manager.
And that was the answer we got this Thursday?
Last Thursday, yes.
Okay, and that's the final answer, or we put it back out?
With the new information provided tonight, we'll reach out again.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We've exhausted the sign-in sheet. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard?
Tom Coyne, Manuka. Is there any update on the scope of the rental mailings that went out and the costs involved in them? I also like to comment on the health manager report. A copy and paste of the HUD health newsletter for $140,000 on a website. I'm not impressed. The papers I just handed forward were from Selena Andapan's OECD appointment. The law department provided the document from over a year ago. It is noted again that the employee is not listed as the owner, so they would not be on for code violations, real estate, trash, and tax. I guess they didn't notice on the attached document that on 3/23 of 2023, she applied for a marriage license, which was in the Scranton Times, with Kendrick Brewster, who is the property owner of that residence she's in. Now, if she did marry him and it is her husband, maybe they should check whether or not her husband has also paid all of the required fees for the property she lives in. Now on to Shaquana Barrett, also known as Connie. My biggest issue is the Planning Commission does not even know how to operate under Robert's rules. A stylist will not resolve what the Planning Commission is greatly lacking. On 6F, the sidewalk cafes, you might want to take a look at amending also 309-2, obstructions of public places, since it's directly involved in that legislation. File 6G with the fireworks. I've already talked about the time, and you have the notice about the time issues. My only problem at this point after that is, as this is going through tonight, it is less than 2 weeks, and to put in a permit that requires 2 weeks is impossible. So right now you have a conflict where you have to comply with a law that you cannot comply with, at least for the 2-week period. Looking at the documents, right now 2 extra officers will be assigned. That would include, I assume, both Friday and Saturday prior and after, as that's the period under the law. On the spreadsheet provided, it shows the start of the holiday at 4th. I'll skip on that one there, but the financial impact is listed, like always, as NA in that document. But they'll have 2 dedicated police officers for fire safety and enforcement. We're looking at the 30th, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 7th, and 8th. 24 hours except for the 4th, and that's 24 hours. 7 days times 24 hours plus 1 equals 169 work hours, times 2 officers equals 338 work hours, or the equivalent of 8.4 work weeks, and yet we have no financial impact. The fire department promoted 70% of burns from fireworks happened between the 2 weeks before and after the 4th of July. Out of the 2,600, 1,100 are sparklers, or 42.3% of the 74% are still allowed under code. Moving on to the people living outside the city and exceptions granted. I'd like to know, of those 3 people who were brought forward here, who are they? I understand Cipriani is one, Kathleen Kennedy now is one, and out of decorum, I withheld Scranton Police Officer John Hallock last week. I suspect that he did not have a waiver on file, but he did die, according to the paper, in his home in Kingston. So if his residence was in Kingston, as in the paper, he obviously should have had a waiver. The chair pointed out that the residency waiver for Kathleen Kennedy is because it was new in the employee handbook. How can you ignore the city charter that a waiver was required before hire since 1980? It was excused to be now running forward, ignoring the charter required it 43 years ago. As you were made fully aware prior to the vote, you can reconsider and re-vote on it. If you do intend to violate the ethics code and your oath of office, let it continue by knowingly violating the city charter. It's noted in the code that the controller from time to time after 6 months require bona fide proof of residency. How often is that done? Can you provide the dates, including when they were done and how they are taken care of? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coyne.
So, Mr. Coyne, I was going to report this in 5th order, but we did get a response on the rental postcards that went out.
Yes.
So 9,620 cards went out at a cost of $4,473.50. They said they used a listing of property owners provided by the county, and the county wouldn't provide an updated 2023 list, was the answer that we got.
Thank you. Well, maybe we can get a copy of that list from the county, because obviously your residents and mine never were rentals, nor was Mr. McAndrew's.
Good evening, Council. Dave Dawson, resident, taxpayer, and I'd just like to mention to Mr. Brewster, I get to wear my Wookiee shirt tonight, and you have to wear a suit. Ha, 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 ha. Okay, let's get started. As you may have guessed, the main subject tonight is walkability of downtown Scranton. Could you imagine tearing down the millions of dollars worth of stoplights only to find out that this plan doesn't work? It's a real fake job. It's just a way of getting to over $200,000 out of the pockets of the Scranton taxpayer. And not to pick on Missy Mayor, but the person that brought this person into town wasn't a Democrat, he was a Republican. I can only imagine, I mean, it's just ungodly. This mass it's a real estate bonanza. Tax exempts. Every week I'm talking about tax exempts. And even worse yet, now they want to be involved in politics. Every time a person like Henry Amoroso comes to town with his snake oil sales, what do we get? Lackawanna College funded him. They donated $100,000 to get him into town. And then we donate, I think, $1 million back to Lackawanna College. I personally feel that if you're tax exempt, you have no right to play in politics. That includes religion, too. I have better things to do than to serve 2.5 to 15 years on a chain gang because some Southern Baptist yaya can't buy slaves anymore. And that's the way things were down south. There was an article on it today. You got drug in on a bogus crime, and you got sentenced to an ungodly long sentence. And, oh, by the way, you are 27% likely to be hauled out in a coffin off of that chain gang. It's just ridiculous. How are we ever gonna, you can't get people to behave themselves with stoplights. They sit and deny it. And, I don't know, at the top of my hill by the yeshiva, Alder Street, it's a really vicious hill, so there's no stop sign there. Smart planning. The only thing is, the people on Stafford Avenue want to burn right through the stop sign. And if they T-bone you, they're going to have some kind of story. They're going to deny it, have you in court. I had a guy come down on an entrance ramp and destroyed about 5 vertebral discs in my back, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "Oh, I was fixing my radio, and this is the first time I'm the cause of the accident." You know, in other words, how many accidents have you caused in reality? This is the first time you can't talk your way out of an accident. But these situations evolve like cities and towns, and they find what works, and they install it, and that's the rules. And to change it into something else, I'm a little mad about it, really. I think we should rename the Central City the Wayne Evans Memorial Theme Park, because it's a joke. It's a joke. Why did you bring this man into town? It's not going to be Mayberry RFD. It will never be Mayberry RFD. And You know, people getting run over. I've been advocating for always stops for people to cross streets and things like that, and I think that's a pretty smart idea. Always, no left turn, right turn, nothing. But to do that and spend money on something like that, it was obviously before Mayor Page, and his study isn't very astute. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Have a
Thompson.
good night.
Is there anyone else who would like to be heard?
Delmar Gazevich, Scranton City taxpayer. I want to wish everybody a happy Independence Day. It's a major holiday, major traffic holiday. A lot of people are going to be traveling, and as a result, Independence Day is one of the top 3 holidays for automobile accidents and for traffic fatalities. We can predict over 900 traffic fatalities next Tuesday. So I advise people who are traveling to, instead of driving, consider taking the train. Well, not the train, because we don't have that. So maybe the bus, except the buses don't run on holidays. So maybe walk if you're going less than 15 minutes down the street. Bike if you want to risk getting run over by traffic fatalities. But otherwise, I guess, stay safe and hope that when you get into an accident, they don't have to scrape you off the road. Because we don't have any other choice other than driving right now. This is what the walkability study is all about. It's to help promote our choices, our freedom of choice and freedom of movement to determine how we want to get places and how to get there safely. Because as mentioned earlier, you can't walk in places that aren't safe. Now, the stop signs in the downtown sound like a bad idea right off the bat, and pretty universally everyone seemed to come to that conclusion. It doesn't have to be, though. The purpose of the stop signs in these high traffic areas is to not allow motor traffic to impede the flow of foot traffic, which is ideal if there's enough foot traffic. But it also has to be done smart and safe. The current crosswalks that we have now are street grade, which means that they don't impede motorists driving through intersections whatsoever. But if those were put at sidewalk grade to be pro-pedestrian instead of pro-motorist, then not only will people have to come to a stop and not be able to blow through the stop signs, but it will also make it easier for anybody with a disability to cross the street. Now we're looking at a intersection. If anyone's going to be going straight, they're going to have to going over 2 of these elevated crosswalks, which means that they cannot go through the intersection quickly without severely damaging their vehicle. And if that's the case, then stop signs or streetlights aren't going to make a difference. This works. We know that this works from any city that has elevated crosswalks or at-grade crosswalks, such as the Netherlands, which has some of the safest pedestrian traffic in the world, to the point where motorists are the happiest, despite the fact that everything is built for the pedestrian. So drivers are always going to be more pleased with pedestrian-first systems, despite that seeming pretty contrarian, because this means that more people get off the roads, so there's less traffic, less hassle, and when pedestrians mess up, it's less convenient for the pedestrian. So right now, as it stands with these traffic lights, pedestrians now have to stop and wait or risk running across the road against traffic, putting everybody at risk. With stop signs and elevated sidewalks, it's now more convenient for the pedestrian to cross whenever they want because the motorist has to stop regardless. And motorists in the Netherlands report feeling more frustrated driving when pedestrians don't cross because they find it more convenient to wait for the pedestrian than to get into the risks of blowing through stop signs, jumping over these crosswalks, etc. So if we design the walkability in the downtown the right way, and we stay smart about it, the stop signs are going to work. It's going to be better for pedestrian traffic, which increases the wealth of small businesses and the growth of small businesses by over 3 times. So all of the small businesses that we want to see in our downtowns and in our neighborhoods are going to be boosted by better walkability, and these stop signs can help with that. Now, the cost of tearing down the streetlights seems, and putting in stop signs seems a bit steep. I don't see why we can't just switch them to blink red for a while. And then if that doesn't work, move on from there. From what I understand about streetlights, it's not too difficult to do. We don't have to tear them down, put in stop signs, save some money that way. But that's all I've got for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Delmar. Does anyone else like to be heard?
Good evening, Council. Virgil Argenta. Mrs. Brazil had reported that she has 2 small children and a dog, and she's a little bit concerned on that. I went up today, I took a picture, I measured it's almost 4 feet deep by about 3 feet wide, and it's been a year and a half, and she's reported it. They put barricades up. So if there's any way we can help her out there. And then, last week I was here in regards to the Weston Field. Seems to get a little bit worse. The gates were, I have some pictures here as well. In the beginning, as it progressed through the day, I had a dumpster where the dumpster was empty. At the end of the day, the dumpster was full. Again, the same thing with the alcoholic beverages and the vendors and the food. And you'll see there where the grass is, and you'll see some water and mud where they've been driving through there from the field, from the running court into the basketball court, which is clearly marked, no vehicles. Now, today, because of last night's rain, you'll see the water in the pit full of mud. The gates were closed. There was a guy driving a car around the track, and I asked him, I said, hey, this is for walking and running people. And he said, I don't understand. I said, well, I'll call the police. And as soon as I said the police, that was it. He understood what I was talking about. And he told me that he was trying to teach somebody how to drive. That's not the place for it. It's clearly marked. There's gates there. I mean, if somebody could lock the gates at dusk, like the park says it closes, maybe we could alleviate some of the shootings, the drug trade that's been going on. That we all know that. Last night I was in contact with a retired police sergeant. Friday night, Saturday night, up until 3 o'clock in the morning, there was 3 cars in the basketball area. The lights are on, so it's easy for them to do their thing. There's gates there. If we could just lock the gates and do our part so that the police could have one less call that maybe they can go on, and you'll see the alcohol again is a grave concern. And there's a lot of job Johnnies around the city in a lot of the city parks. Do we have a list of where those job Johnnies are and how much the job Johnnies cost us? And the signs. I have, if I may, another park. I know we're looking to do some more parks. Here's another park. The park is closed. It says closed. There's signs that says there's cameras. We're spending all this money on signs and park equipment. That park you'll see is in disrepair. Maybe with the job Johnnies and the signs. I talked to the Park and Recreations director yesterday, and he said he's short-staffed. Maybe if we cut back on some of the job Johnnies and the signs, maybe we could give him another guy or two to maintain the parks. Is anybody paying attention to Rubicon? I would pay close attention to that. In the next couple weeks, it's going to get interesting. And back to the Weston Field. On the basketball courts, you'll see there's a gray shed there. That's a city tool shed. And these guys from Park and Recreations, they need to get in that 24/7. And you'll see the vehicles that are parked there for the festival. There's no access to that tool shed. Thank you. Have a nice holiday, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Argento.
Mr. Voldenberg, can we reach out to the administration, see if anybody's aware of any permits that were pulled for Weston Park? From one of the pictures, it looks like there's a soccer team It's a van with a soccer team logo. I don't know if there's any type of leases for weekend soccer leagues, anything like that. But if we could have any information on anything that would be occurring in Weston Field, that would be great.
I'll do that, sir.
Frank, can you also check on that 1400 South Main Avenue, that sinkhole? See what's going on with that? Like, what's the remedy? What if they have a timeline for getting that remediated? Appreciate if you could do that. And we'll also ask our Parks and Rec director to really take a close look at what's going on over at Weston Field. You know, especially with vehicles driving in there. The alcohol obviously is a concern, and some of the issues brought forth by Mr. Argenta. And also, if we can get a list of porta potties that the city rents or leases, what's the number and where are they located, and what's the cost?
I made note of it. I'll follow up on them all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard?
And that address, Frank, is 1414.
1414, thank you. Fifth order, 5A motion.
Mr. Smurl, do you have any motions or comments?
Yes, just two. I also was at the walkability study at the old Scranton Central High School. I believe I was at a different meeting from what I've heard tonight. But if you check the statistics, comparing stop signs and traffic lights, the number of injuries compared to fatality injuries and stuff. I don't know where all this other stuff is coming from, but I did read the entire report, and I was there, and I certainly have a complete different view of it. But I'll go further into that when we have time. The other one is Novabrino Pool Complex. There was a blocked sewer up there last week. And when they dug it out to repair it, they found there was terracotta piping up there, which is that old clay piping. And it goes through now where we want to put our new playground area. So the city is going to dig that all up and replace that before we put the new playground system in. So there's going to be times when that park is going to be closed. I don't have the exacts on it, but that's the last I've heard on it. That's all I have, Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Smurl. Mr. Schuster?
Yes, I have several. I just caught some of what was discussed. I will say I have been to the Netherlands. I have driven in the Netherlands, and there's quite a few more bikers in the Netherlands than I see in downtown Scranton. And I did not enjoy driving with the amount of bikes on the road. First, Mr. Voldenberg, can we ask, whether it's the fire department, police department, administration, if we can get a update on the Sorrenti Center, what's going on there, and specifically in our capital budget this year, we have $125,000 worth of expenditures for 2023. If we could get an update on where we're at with those expenditures and what upgrades are being done there.
I will, sir.
Next, could we reach out to Chris Smith and Scott Petroface to come in for an update on Rubicon? I know we've asked for it a while back. We kind of laid back on it, but Rubicon has...
Mr. Schuster, I spoke to the mayor today.
Okay.
I believe that they're going to come in either the 15th or the 22nd.
Okay. Sounds good. So...
for caucus.
All right, great. So, I mean, if there's anything that's... how the process is going, if it's going smoothly, if it's more efficient, if we're using less trucks or more trucks.
18th or 25th, I'm sorry.
Okay. How overtime is looking in the department, if we're down on that, and if there's cost savings that we've started to see from that system. As well as, can we get the date that contract expires? I don't have that on hand.
I'll get that.
I have an address at, it's 2225 Rear Jackson Street. I don't know if DPW is aware that there is a home, there's an access road along the railroad tracks there, and it seems that garbage at that home hasn't been picked up in quite some time. 1414 South Main, which we've already seen, or we've already heard from tonight. one thing I wanted to stay on top of is we received the 2021 audit some time ago. There were several findings in the audit that showed material weaknesses in internal controls with financial reporting, as well as significant deficiencies identified with federal awards in the Department of OECD. Of these findings, there were 8 corrective actions that were to occur. 6 of those actions had an anticipated completion date of 6/30. So could we get an update from OECD and our business office as to where we are specifically with the 6 actions that were due to be completed on 6/30, which is coming in a few days, and the remainder of the other 2 that are due on 9/1?
I will, Mr. Schuster.
I know a few meetings ago we did get a request of were the potential wage increases for the Scranton Police and the Fire Department included in the budget? I don't think we've got an answer on that yet. If we could ask for an answer with that one. And then I'm going to shoot through a couple requests I've had, and we'll see what your answer is. So I had some past inquiries about non-resident city employees. Did we ever get any answers on non-resident city employees?
Not as of today. I was advised by the HR director that I will have that information tomorrow.
All right, thank you. The Weston Field Bathhouse, a few weeks ago, they did a study on the structure of the Weston Field Bathhouse. Have any official response from the administration about the Weston Field Bathhouse?
It was inspected, and the report was passed on to OECD by the Parks Director. And I have a message out to OECD for a status.
Okay, so they should be sending that over to us, so at least we know what's occurring with that structure?
That's correct. I'll follow up in the morning.
All right, thank you. I did take a look at the report that we do get from license and inspections and code enforcement. Some of those addresses, again, the 305 Putnam, 502, 504 West Gibson, 736, 738 Prescott, 1608 Hawthorne, and 1429 Hawthorne. I know I put them in some time ago, but I haven't seen them on that list. Just looking for some follow-up on those.
I can get a more accurate update online tomorrow for you.
All right.
Outside of that report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Voldenberg. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Schuster. Dr. Rothchild?
Yes. First, I wanted to address the downtown connectivity study in the presentation that took last week. So I was in attendance of that, and I was also left with some questions that I had regarding the study. But just because the recommendations were made doesn't mean we need to take them up on all the recommendations. I guess I think he did mention that some of the cities that he had recommended so many stop signs instead of lights at intersections, that they didn't necessarily change all those intersections over to stop signs. So it's not set in stone with the recommendations that were provided. He also did speak at length about changes of one-way traffic to two-way traffic to make it easier to navigate the streets, and gave the rationale behind the distance of the lanes and why that would be appropriate and what is typical for those distances. So I did appreciate hearing that part of it. But I did have concerns about the feasibility of it. I know that there are grants that will be able to go towards that, but how we're going to do it over time, I think he'd said that it's more of a 5-year plan, not a 10-year plan, not a 2-year plan, but how we plan that out over those 5 years and what changes we make and how much it costs. I would really like to get into that in the future, and also knowing what the implementation process is like. So I didn't really get to talk to him enough about it afterwards, but that's, it's something that it's not going to change overnight. One day you're going to wake up and the whole downtown map is going to be changed, but how does that get implemented over time? What does that look like? What have other cities done? Because many cities have made changes like these, and what worked, what didn't. And with regards to, I'm sorry, someone was talking in the background. So I'd appreciate if people didn't do that, because makes me lose my train of thought.
I would appreciate it when
So,
we're speaking up here. We try not to interrupt you when you're speaking, so if people could please not speak while council speaking, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
So those were some concerns that I had regarding this study, but I do appreciate the interest in increasing our walkability downtown, and I think the more pedestrians we could bring downtown and the safer that we could make it for people to walk or to bike or to, ride their wheelchair is really going to help downtown to prosper. And I think that, we can't have a strong city without a strong downtown, and that doesn't mean that we have to ignore our other neighborhoods. I know it might feel like that, and like so much of the focus is on downtown, and I understand that frustration, but I mean, this is only one step towards making our city a better place for people to live and to work and to visit. And so I do see a lot of positives with improving our walkability and the amount of people downtown. And I think there's a comment about the potential bike lanes, and Councilman Schuster had made that about how in the Netherlands that there's a lot more bikers. Well, there's a lot more bikers because they feel safer biking. So we need to make it safer for people to bike. I wouldn't bike downtown, but if there were lanes, then that's something that I would consider if I was going to feel safe doing that. So I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who do that. And even if you're not a biker or not interested in biking somewhere to get there, doesn't mean that there aren't plenty of people who will do that. So that's my response regarding the connectivity study. And for there's a property I'd brought up. I don't know if I brought it up in the meeting last week or sent it over to Mr. Voldenberg. There's one on Sanderson Avenue that had a previous fire. There's another one on Prescott Avenue at 429 Prescott Avenue that a neighbor had complained about in the past, and then she caught up with me again to explain that nothing's been done with the property still, and that fire on Prescott Avenue had taken place, I don't know, a year and a half ago at least. So I feel like we need a better system in order to track these properties that have had fires and what gets done with them, because they're either condemned and then put on the demo list, or the owner says that they're going to renovate it and fix it up. And then there's like it feels like there's an indefinite amount of time that they're given in order to do that. So how often do we check back in and make sure that those renovations are occurring, or is a property just going to sit there vacant, having had a fire there for how many years? So if we can add that property to check on it as well and see where the owner is at with their plans.
I will, Dr. Rothchild.
Thank you. And I know you had also forwarded me some of the study responses that I was asking about last week, and one of them especially was over on Reese Street in North Scranton. So the SPD did get back to us saying that they were increasing patrols in that area, and they did recommend that we go ahead and change some of the signs or add additional signage or stop bars to get people to stop at the stop signs and not go through the one-way. So I do want to make the requests for that street and then the intersection with Greenbush over to DPW to see if that can happen with the change in signage and the other things that would be appropriate for their department.
I'll have the city engineer send something over to them.
Okay, thank you. And I had someone who works for Colts contact me with a couple of things that they were hoping could get addressed with the city, and they said they had been in talks with someone else with the city, but wasn't sure who it was, and they're not here at this point. So some of this probably would apply to DPW, and one of the concerns was that they felt there needed to be an additional bus stop to add on over, like heading east on Lackawanna, near Lackawanna and Penn, and the reason being that a lot of riders are now visiting Steamtown to go for medical appointments, and many of those riders have difficulty getting around and accessibility issues, that it's difficult for their other stop that they have on Wyoming Avenue. And even that being a block and a half away is still a bit too much of a distance. So they were hoping to add a stop sign on that route. He said it wouldn't be a layover stop, it would just be a bump stop. So if the city would consider that, and I think they were fine to provide signage in order to get the bus stop placed there, but I think they'd need permission from the city. So if we could go ahead and check into that.
I will, Dr. Roth.
And then the second request that they had is that the buses, when they're exiting from the transit system onto Lackawanna Avenue, there's a double painted line where there should be a broken line. And so if there was like an accident, they could be at fault for having crossed that double line. So there's not really a good way for them to make a left out of there without breaking the driving laws. So they wanted to see if that could be changed to a broken line in order to make it easier for them to turn left out of that station.
I'll give that to DPW Roads.
Okay, great. And I think one more thing was that a lot of drivers are traveling pretty quickly over Lackawanna Avenue near the bridge, and so that's another thing that makes it more difficult and unsafe for them to exit from the transit station. And so they were hoping maybe there could be a sign that warns drivers that there's going to be exiting buses from there.
I'll include that also.
Okay, thanks so much. And that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rothchild. I have a few things. I know Joan had mentioned the delinquent real estate tax. We continue to work with the single tax office solicitor regarding placement of the delinquent real estate tax information on the city website. They apparently have a few concerns about that, and they're trying to work through them before they resume putting that back up. Doris had mentioned, Doris isn't here tonight, but the curb cuts at Olive Street and Colfax Avenue, that has been sent down to DPW, and I actually spoke to the mayor about that today. See if we can, she's been asking for that for a while. It's something that really needs to be addressed. She also mentioned 421 Colfax Avenue. I found out through the mayor that code enforcement was there. They've condemned that home. It's scheduled for demolition. However, there's asbestos testing that needs to occur prior to the demolition, so that's a work in progress. And Doris had also mentioned about a bus stop at Mulberry and Colfax, and I believe that the mayor recently had a conversation with Tim McGrath from Lackawanna County Transit Colts to review possible placement for covering there, especially for, there's a lot of patients that come out of Geisinger and have to wait there, whether it's rain, sun, what have you, make life a lot easier for all of them. Zoning board applicants, our city council office has received 4 letters of interest and resumes for 2 open appointments by council to the zoning hearing board. They'll be coming forth probably within the next few weeks, recommendations. The Environmental Advisory Council, our City Council office, has received 2 letters of interest and resumes for 2 open appointments by City Council to the Environmental Advisory Council. Also, something, I believe, this is something that I think Marie Schumacher has mentioned, and a lot of people have mentioned, quite frankly, the wall down on Lackawanna Avenue next to the Radisson. Riley Associates is working on the design. Apparently, we got some funding that was initially for the county. Was that LST, where RACP?
I'm not sure, but it was around.
Yeah, there was $230,000, and so they're working on a design and hopefully going to start remediating that wall before it tumbles, if you will. Rubicon, initially I thought it was going to start on June 14th. However, it actually started yesterday. the mayor told me we're going to have Rubicon come in here either June 18th or the 25th for caucus, so they can kind of give us an update early on to see, excuse me, did I say July 18th or 25th? I apologize. To come in and explain exactly how things are going early on with that. As far as Naog Park and the gorge, there were concerns about the gorge, and still, there's always concerns about the gorge. It's my understanding that Parks and Rec staff have cleared some of the shrubs and trees down near that area, especially some that like had overgrown where the cameras are. And the mayor had indicated to me that the cameras are monitored from police headquarters, so they can actually see if people are heading down in there. And they're also increasing patrols, especially on hotter days when we know it's likely people are going to go down in there. We'd far prefer to chase them out of there, give them a citation, rather than have to risk the fire and police department's lives to get down there and try to fish them out of the bottom of that gorge. So hopefully, I know it's tempting. Unfortunately, we don't have a pool at Naog right now, but we're working on that, and that's something we've committed ourselves to try to get done. As mentioned earlier, the refuge and trash fees have been updated on the city's website as of May 31st. Street signs, they continue to make the street signs. The mayor's looking at possibly doing an RFP going out to actually help, because there's only three individuals working in the traffic division. It's very difficult for them to come up with the process for getting them installed. So she's considering putting out an RFP to have somebody install the signs and have our city continue to make the signs. Let me see. And I think that's all I have at this time.
5B for introduction, an ordinance authorizing the removal of the existing no parking signs on the 1700 block of Ash Street and replacing those signs with new R7-302 no parking symbol arrow signs at adequate intervals along both sides of the 1700 block of Ash Street, and memorialize this no parking zone within section 439-25C of the city code.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion on item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second?
On the question, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5C for introduction, an ordinance establishing S1-1 school signs on all approaches to Lincoln Jackson Academy to the campus on Dixon Avenue and Electric Street, establishing a crosswalk across Dixon Avenue to the parking lot in front of Lincoln Jackson Academy, establishing a designated pull-off area for students being dropped off and picked up near the crosswalk, establishing a crosswalk at the intersection of Dixon Avenue and Electric Street, establishing a no parking zone from a point 20 feet east of the easterly curb line of the driveway to the rear parking lot of Michael's School off of Electric Street to a point 20 feet west of the westerly curb line of the driveway to the rear parking lot of Michael's School off of Electric Street to improve traffic operations, pedestrian traffic, and maintain adequate sight distance in a school zone.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second?
On the question, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5D for introduction, a resolution, appointment of Selena Andiapan, Scranton, Pennsylvania, to the position of Executive Director of the Office of Economic and Community Development, effective June 19, 2023.
This time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
And second?
On the question,
On the question, something I brought up a few weeks ago, the effective date on this is June 19th. Today is June 27th, according to our handbook and according to our city code. It has to come before council before we put these people into their positions. I do understand she has worked for the city and some other functions in the past, but This was something we just spoke about in the last 3 weeks, and right after we spoke about it, here we have another appointment where the person has already started in their position. I think as long as council humors this, I think it's going to continue, and it was something I spoke about that day as well.
All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
3-1, the motion passes.
Sixth order, 6A, reading by title, filed to council number 67, 2023, an ordinance installing a multi-way stop at the intersection of Capouse Avenue and Poplar Street to allow adequate sight distance for westerly Poplar Street vehicles.
You've heard reading by title of item 6A. What is your pleasure?
Mr.
Did
Chairman,
we, I think we skipped over 5E, right? Oh, I'm sorry, my apologies.
We're not doing 5E this evening. We're going to move that till next week because the window is still open for applicants, so we've determined that it's more appropriate to introduce that next week after we've seen all of the applications.
Mr. Chairman, I move that item 6A pass reading by title.
second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
6B, reading by title, filed to council number 68, 2023, an ordinance establishing a multi-way stop at the intersection of South Irving Avenue and Birch Street to allow adequate sight distance for vehicles exiting South Irving Avenue.
You've heard reading by title of item 6B. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that item 6B pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
6C, reading by title, filed to council number 69, 2023, an ordinance establishing a multi-way stop at the intersection of South Bromley Avenue and Washburn Street to allow adequate sight distance for vehicles exiting South Bromley Avenue.
You've heard reading by title of item 6C. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that item 6C pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
6D, reading by title, filed to council number 70, 2023, an ordinance establishing a multi-way stop at the intersection of North Sumner Avenue and Theodore Street with installation of stop bars at all stop sign locations and 4 feet behind crosswalks where appropriate, with installation of school signs on Theodore Street on each approach to the school campus, and installation of speed limit signs on Theodore Street at appropriate intervals to improve traffic operations and pedestrian traffic safety in the school zone.
You've heard reading by title of item 6D. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that item 6D pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
6E, reading by title, filed to council number 71, 2023, an ordinance establishing a multi-way stop at the intersection of North Lincoln Avenue and Theodore Street with installation of stop bars at all stop sign locations and 4 feet behind crosswalks where appropriate, with installation of school signs on Theodore Street on each approach to the school campus, and installation of speed limit signs on Theodore Street at appropriate intervals to improve traffic operations and pedestrian safety in a school zone.
You've heard reading by title of item 6E. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that item 6E pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
6F, reading by title, filed to council number 72, 2023, an ordinance creating a sidewalk cafe and parklet program to replace the City of Scranton's previous special encroachment permit parking.
You've heard reading by title of item 6F. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that item 6F pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
6G, reading by title, filed to council number 73, 2023, an ordinance amending and updating the City of Scranton's fireworks code to align with Pennsylvania's amended fireworks law, Act 74 of 2022, to further restrict the use of fireworks.
You've heard reading by title of item 6G. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that item 6G pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
I make a motion to suspend the rules to move item 6G to seventh order for final passage.
And a second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second to move item 6G to seventh order for final passage. On the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, file to Council number 65, 2023, amending Chapter 203 of City Code, Contractors, Permits, and Inspections, to amend the fee schedule for permits for contracting work, also known as building permits.
As chairperson of the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Smurl?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B, for consideration by the Committee on Public Works for adoption, file to Council number 66, 2023, establishing a no parking zone on the easterly side of Capouse Avenue from a point 70 feet south of the southerly curb line of Walnut Street to a point 35 north of the northerly curb line of Walnut Street, on the westerly side of Capouse Avenue from a point 35 feet south of the southerly curb line of Walnut Street to a point 95 feet north of the northerly curb line of Walnut Street, to maintain adequate sight distance for traffic exiting Walnut Street onto or across Capouse Avenue.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson of the Committee on Public Works?
As chairperson for the Committee on Public Works, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second.
On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Smurl?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
7C, for consideration by the Committee on Public Safety for adoption, resolution number 258, 2023, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials, including but not limited to the business administrator and/or fire chief, to execute and enter into, consummate, and execute a lease purchase agreement for Sutphen Kenworth T4 Air and Command Unit and Sutphen Custom Engine with First Security Finance, Inc.
What is the recommendation of the Vice Chairman of Committee on Public Safety?
As Vice Chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety, I recommend final passage of item 7C.
Second.
On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Smurl?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes. Hereby declare item 7C legally and lawfully adopted.
7D, for consideration by the Committee on Public Works for adoption, resolution number 259, 2023, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into any and all documents necessary to convey to Pennsylvania American Water Company a deed of easement and right-of-way to construct, operate, and repair a combined sewage overflow containment tank in the vicinity of the South Washington Avenue pump station.
What is the recommendation, chairperson for the Committee on Public Works?
As chairperson for the Committee on Public Works, I recommend final passage of item 7D.
Second.
On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Smurl?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes. Hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted.
7E, for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption, resolution number 260, 2023, ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to Bloomberg Philanthropies for up to $25,000 to be used towards the Asphalt Art Initiative.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson of the Committee on Community Development?
As Chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7E.
Second.
On the question.
On the question, this is a grant. We're looking for some money for doing an arts project in the city. I would like to, say when doing a project such as this is artwork that's going to be driven over with vehicles. I would hope that there would be a plan for maintenance and upkeep of it to make it look, keep it looking in the best condition. I would like to know that the city has looked at whether these streets are going to be paved or on the paved list in the near future, and what the average lifespan of this artwork is, so there could be a removal process if it gets damaged or disheveled. Just a suggestion.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Smurl?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7E legally and lawfully adopted.
7F for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, Resolution Number 261, 2023, authorizing the city to reimburse itself in the amount not to exceed $5 million for expenditures paid by the city from its general fund in connection with capital projects to be completed during calendar year 2023-2024, with a non-taxable debt issuance and in compliance with Section 1.150-2 of the United States Treasury Regulations as amended, and authorizing the mayor and other appropriate proper officers of the city to carry out the intent and purpose of this resolution, specifically including but not limited to the making of timely reimbursement allocations upon the issuance of the debt.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson of the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend a final vote of item 7F.
Second.
On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Smurl?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
No.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes. Hereby declare item 7F legally and lawfully adopted.
7G for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption, Resolution Number 262, 2023, ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Discretionary Grant Program for up to $9 million to be used towards the Pennsylvania Community Alliance Vehicle Charging Project.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7G.
Second.
On the question. Roll call, please.
On the question.
Nope.
I'm sorry, on the question, I just had a couple of comments on the legislation. I know we were discussing it in caucus, and I just wanted to mention that this was coming out of the idea that this would be helpful towards economic development of the area. This is in partnership with other communities, and for people who are traveling, utilizing electric vehicles, they would make the stop in Scranton or Pittston in order to charge up their vehicle and then provide business to our area by being here for the charge station. So that's one thought behind this grant and project, and so I think that would be something really beneficial to have.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Smurl?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes. Hereby declare item 7G legally and lawfully adopted.
7H, formerly 6G, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for adoption, filed to Council Number 73, 2023, amending and updating the City of Scranton's Fireworks Code to align with Pennsylvania's amended Fireworks Law, Act 74 of 2022, to further restrict the use of fireworks.
Chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7H.
Second.
On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Smurl?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7H legally and lawfully adopted.
8th Order 8A, filed to Council Number 62, 2023.
This ordinance is the HUD 2023 Annual Action Plan. There will be a public hearing on this piece of legislation Tuesday, June 20th at 5:45 p.m. Oh. Excuse me. There was a public hearing held for this legislation on June 20th at 5:45 PM. I apologize.
8B, file to council number 64, 2023.
This ordinance is creating an overtime reporting requirement for all city departments and employees, has been tabled until we receive additional information from the administration.
8C, resolution number 254, 2023.
This resolution is the appointment of Coney Bennett to the, I think it's Coney Barrett, but it might be Bennett, to the City Planning Commission. It has been tabled until we receive her residence address.
Mr. Voldenberg, did we receive any information on item 8B, the overtime legislation?
No, we did not.
Okay. Did we receive anything further on 8C, the appointment to the Planning Commission?
Not as of today.
Okay, thank you.
I believe on 8C, the mayor has reached out to her and she hasn't gotten back to her yet. I was told that today. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting is adjourned.